One of my responsibilities is to create a menu for lunch, and I've got a whole bunch of lunch menus running on screens throughout the office building. I've just made a new version of that menu. I've changed the design, the way it looks. I need to deploy that new version to the devices around my office. How do I do that? How do I get the experience I built in Composer onto the devices I want to run in the field? That's the topic of this video. The first step is to publish the experience. Inside Composer, under the File menu, you'll see an option for Publish to Deploy. By publishing, we're making this experience available in the cloud. That's what's happening right now. Which takes us to the Share and Deploy console. The Share and Deploy console is the place you can manage all of the published experiences and all of the devices on which you want to deploy those experiences. When you publish directly from Composer, the information panel for that experience will appear. So here you can see multiple experiences, but this is the one I published on the right. If I click it, there's the information panel for this experience, what I would have seen when published from Composer. There are multiple tabs, as you can see here, one of which is called Deploy in Venue. This means I have Player installed and running on devices somewhere in the world, someplace that is network accessible. In this example, you can see we have 4 devices that are online, and on the right, the filters, I can click the offline button. I have other offline devices as well. The objective here is to select on which devices I want to deploy this new menu experience. And I can pick just the ones that are online. I can also pick ones that are offline. And then if you scroll down, you'll see I have an option here to deploy. I can just push it, I can just play it, or I can do both. Push means get it on that device, but don't play it yet. It's just there and ready to go. Play means play what's there. In fact, if I don't push and I just play, it's only going to play what's already on the device, whether or not I deployed an updated version. By pushing and playing, I'm pushing the latest version to the device in Venue and then playing that experience. If I click deploy, it just happens instantaneously. If I click the calendar icon, well, now I can schedule that deployment for some time in the future, or maybe even multiple times. So this is how I can push my published experience to players located anywhere in the world. And I mean player running on any of our supported operating systems: Windows, Android, iOS, Chrome, LG WebOS, Samsung Tizen, BrightSign, and Raspberry Pi. See, I just remembered all of them. So that is probably the main way you're going to publish experiences, is installing Player on devices in the field, publishing those experiences from Composer, and then in the Share and Deploy console, going to that Deploy in Venue tab, selecting some devices and deploying. You could go the other way, by the way. If I click the My Players tab in the Share and Deploy console, here I can select a set of players, and then from those selected players, I can select an experience to run. And then by picking one of those experiences under Deploy, I can then follow the same steps of push and play. So I can go to it from either direction. You can tag players. So one of the neat things you can do from the player view is you can use tags. If you look over here on the right, I can enter tags and narrow down to the players I want. So there's lots of things you can do. These are the basics. I just want to touch on one other option, which is publishing to the web, because it is typical historically that what you're doing is publishing experiences to an in-venue device, players running on that device. But the beauty of Intuiface is you can publish to the web as well. And that you always do from the experience perspective. So here's that next revision of my menu, as we already discussed. I'm not going to the Deploy in Venue tab. I'm going to the Deploy as Web Page tab. And here you can see an option to create a URL. In fact, there's 2 ways to create a URL. One is with player licensing and one is with views licensing. You can see the explanation here for the differences between the two. Fundamentally, it's this: if you have a known limited number of devices and/or you want the ability to run that experience offline, you would choose player licensing. If you have an unknown number of devices, it could be 1, it could be 1,001, you do not have a finite number of devices, then you want to do views licensing. Either way, there's create URL at the bottom, and I can create that URL for the purposes of web deployment. Here, the only thing I need to do is click the save button. I don't have to configure anything. It's a little lazy. I might want to configure it, but I don't have to. There is a default URL. You can see it there. So I have my default URL. I can then save that, and it's published. But I do have a set of configuration options. Whether I'm using player licensing or views licensing, I can change the slug, which is the end of the URL, to kind of personalize it. I can change the favicon, the little icon that appears in the browser tab, at the top of a browser. I can permit its ability to be embedded in an iframe. So rather than being a standalone web page, it can be inside a larger web page. And for player licensing in particular, I can permit installation as a standalone app, and I can configure the retention duration, that is how long it can run offline. If I have views licensing, it's all of these web page settings. It's this permit use in iframes, the same ones, but with views licensing, you can't run it standalone. And there's no retention duration because it has to be online at all times. And that's it. Quick run through of your options. You do have a lot of options, but it's really easy to do. Your life is very simple if you want to deploy those experiences in the field.